summarily understand, this is just a way of writing the Newton's second law of motion in terms of Eulerian variables. But the left hand side is mass into acceleration per unit volume and right hand side is force per unit volume. There are three different force symbolic expressions here, force related symbolic expressions. The first one is the pressure gradient. The second is due to the viscous effect, and the third is due to body force. Now, we have to understand that it is not just one equation, because I could be from 1 to 3, and accordingly you have three such equations. On the top of that, you have the continuity equation. So this is the total set of equations. If it is incompressible and the body force does not depend on temperature and other things, then these two are, or I would say these two considerations, the momentum and mass conservation considerations, are good enough to solve the velocity and pressure in principle, because rho, if it is not an unknown, then you have pressure and the three components of velocities as the four unknowns, and you have the four independent equations to solve the problem. But ironically, for a large number of problems, these equations will not have analytical solution. Why it doesn't have analytical solution is not just because these are coupled partial differential equation, but mostly because of a non-linearity of this term. So this is non-linear. The reason of non-linearity, or the origin of non-linearity, is you see there is a velocity here and another velocity here. So as if two velocity related terms are getting multiplied. Each of these terms is a linear term. This is a linear term and this is a linear derivative, but the product makes it non-linear. So these are coupled non-linear partial differential equation systems. Okay. So one of the most challenging system of equations that you can think of, at least for analytical solution. So this is number one. The second aspect, and a very interesting aspect, is that you have pressure as a variable, but there is no exclusive governing equation that governs the variation of pressure. The momentum equation governs the variation of velocity, the three components. The continuity equation also relates the velocity components with density, but there is no exclusive equation that governs the variation of pressure. So no exclusive governing equation for pressure. So in that way, what I would mention or what I would like to emphasize is that to come up with a solution for pressure, one may have to use certain manipulations to derive a governing equation for pressure distribution, because there is no separate governing equation in an explicit form that governs the variation of pressure. Here, of course, pressure gradient is there, but it is coupled with the velocity, and the governing equation is not governing equation for pressure, but governing equation for velocity. So question is how to get rid of this. So there are several aspects. The first challenge is the nonlinearity of the partial differential equation. So that challenge is overcome if the nonlinear terms are not there. In this particular course, we will look into some special cases where the nonlinear terms are not important. But we have to also keep in mind that the body force itself could be nonlinear. I mean, it could be nonlinear functions of certain variables. And therefore, eliminating the nonlinearity in the acceleration term, in a sense that there are certain physical situations when this term is either identically zero or negligible as compared to the other terms. We can pinpoint those cases quite clearly, but problem specific approach is needed, because body force is in general, I mean, it could be several factors like electrical force, magnetic force, etc. And some of those could be nonlinear. So nonlinearity is something that we will see, and we will try to identify cases where that nonlinearity is not important, so that analytical solution is possible. If it is important, then of course analytical solution is it may not be possible, and I will just briefly mention that what is then required. The other factor, that is, there is no exclusive governing equation for pressure. The obvious way would be to eliminate the pressure gradient, because this pressure gradient term is giving rise to a variable for which there is no exclusive governing equation. So if by some mathematical manipulation this term is eliminated, then the advantage would be that you don't have to deal with pressure. I will write the vector form of this particular term, but you can easily recognize that this vector form of this is the gradient of pressure, or grad P. I mean, I will write it in a moment how it comes, but you see this is the x component of the grad. The y momentum will give y component of the grad if I equal to 2. If I equal to 1, it will give x component of grad. If I equal to 2, it will give you y component, and if I equal to 3, it will give you z component. So if you vectorially add, it will give you the pressure gradient. So one obvious way of eliminating this term is to take a curl of this. The simple logic of this is purely from vector calculus, that we know from a vector identity that curl of the gradient of any scalar variable, this is a null vector. So if we take curl of both sides of the equation in a vector form, this is not a vector form, this is just the component form, but if we convert it to a vector form and then take a curl of both sides, then number one, this becomes 0, a null vector, and number two, you will get curl of velocity, which will give you vorticity, as we have learned in kinematics. And because curl itself includes gradients of velocity, this will include various gradients of velocity, from which we can recover the expression for the stream function. So in this way, we will get a new system of equation, which will include the variables not directly velocity, but the stream function and the vorticity. These are the two variables which we have learned in the kinematics chapter. So this is known as a stream function vorticity approach. The advantage of that approach is you have eliminated pressure, but the challenge is that neither the stream function nor the vorticity, these are I would say fundamental variables or primitive variables. So to give boundary conditions on them for a physical problem is not as physical as the giving the boundary conditions for velocity, pressure, etc. So in that way, the stream function vorticity approach, though it exists in the fluid mechanics approach, but the solution of the resulting equations in terms of the actual physics of the problem, it is not always as straightforward as this. But this approach is something which has been adopted by many researchers or many mathematicians, and the logic is very simple, that the pressure is giving rise to a challenge, so you eliminate pressure. It is something like this, that you have head and you are getting headache, so just you cut your head. If you cut your head, there is no head and therefore there is no headache. So similarly, you have a pressure gradient, you somehow eliminate the pressure gradient and you don't get the trouble of handling the pressure gradient. But that doesn't always give you a physically meaningful way approach of solving a problem. So the act of solving these equations should ideally, number one, be able to recognize the nonlinearity, and number two, need not just eliminate pressure, but retain it as it is, and possibly come up with an explicit equation for pressure by utilizing the coupling between pressure and velocity as we get from the Navier-Stokes equation. And these two aspects are taken care of by the computational fluid dynamics, or CFD. So that has given rise to phenomenal advancements in the subject, because only for a limited class of problems the analytical solution for Navier-Stokes equation becomes possible. So for a large number of problems, typically practical problems, industrial, biomedical, so many other practical problems where analytical solution is very, very challenging, CFD gives a possibility of solving the Navier-Stokes equation without making much of approximations. And that is something which is giving rise to different stream of advancement of the subject. There are separate courses of CFD. You can learn from those courses, and it is not very justified that I talk much on CFD in this particular course, where the main focus is analysis and not CFD computations. But I think that in the context of Navier-Stokes equation, what is CFD and why it is necessary, that at least we must talk about. Subsequently, I will just try to write the vector form of the Navier-Stokes equation, which will have the advantage that I have talked many times, that this particular Cartesian form is coordinate system dependent. That is, it is dependent on the Cartesian coordinate system. But if we can write an equivalent vector form, that is coordinate system agnostic. That means it doesn't depend on the coordinate system. So if you see the left hand side of this, we will write this as total derivative of u I. So for I equal to 1, you will have rho d u1 dt, capital dt, minus this one, so because it is mu is a constant or at least homogeneous, it may be time dependent but homogeneous. So we will take this mu out and expand the term. Plus b1. So if you recall from vector calculus symbolic representation, this is the Laplacian of u1. So this is for I equal to 1. Let us just quickly write what is for I equal to 2 and 3, because that will give you a clear visualization of the equations. And I equal to 3. Okay. So now what we will do is we will multiply equation, the first one, with unit vector along x, I cap. The second one with unit vector along y, that is j cap. And the third one, unit vector along z, that is k cap. So we'll multiply this with I cap. We'll multiply this with j cap, and we'll multiply this with k cap, and then we will add. So what we will get, I'm just writing. The left hand side, you have rho, then ddt of u1 into unit vector along x plus u2 into unit vector along y plus u3 into unit vector along z. That is nothing but the velocity vector v. Okay. This plus this vector addition equal to minus the derivative of pressure along x into I plus that along y into j plus that along z into k. So that is by as per the definition minus of the pressure gradient plus mu Laplacian again see u1i plus u2j plus u3k. So velocity vector v plus body force b1i plus b2j plus b3k. So body force as a vector. Okay. So now we have come up with a equation which is coordinate system agnostic. This you can apply for any coordinate system. Only thing is that you have to use the appropriate expressions for the Laplacian and the Nabla operator. Now we will what we will do is because of your familiarity, we will first solve a few problems with Cartesian system and then we will move on to the other coordinate systems. So the first example that we will talk about, example of application, as we may say, with a motivation of getting exact solution of Navier-Stokes equation. Exact means analytical with no numerical approximate nature. Exact solution of Navier-Stokes equation. So the first example that we will talk about is fully developed flow. I will discuss in more details about the aspect of fully developed flow when we get into the chapter of boundary layer theory. But what we can consider in terms of a simple physical understanding, that let us say that the flow is planar. That means the flow is taking place in a plane which is defined by the variables along these coordinate directions x and y, or you can say x1 and x2 in terms of the index notations. So you'll get two components of velocity u1, u2 respectively along x1 and x2. You can give them name as u and v as per more well-known nomenclature. So when you have this velocity field, and let us say some fluid has entered this closed space, it may be a channel. So there are certain situations when u depends only on one of the coordinates. So u is in general a function of x and y. It has to be. Just like v has to be also a function of x and y. Because, and of course, time. So let us take an example of steady fully developed flow. Just to take out the further complexity due to time variation, we will solve also for problems of on unsteady flow in this particular course itself. But for the time being, let us consider steady fully developed. So u and v are both functions of only x and y. Focusing on U, when the fluid enters the channel, the most general scenario prevails, that is U remains to be a function of X and Y. But as we enter deeper into the channel, there are certain locations, say, I mean, maybe this critical X. What is that critical X? We will study that later. Beyond which the variation of U, say beyond this, U is not a function of X. Okay. That means that the velocity beyond the critical or a particular axial location, whether it is critical or not is not relevant, but beyond certain axial position, the velocity will depend only on the transverse coordinate. So here it is y, but if it's a three-dimensional problem, it could be both y and z, but not definitely x. So this is called as fully developed flow. As I told that what physics governs fully developed flow, that we will talk and in sufficient details in the boundary layer theory chapter. But for the exact solution of Navier-Stokes equation, it is good enough to realize that the entire domain of this fluid flow is conceptually broken into something which is not fully developed, that is called as developing flow, and fully developed. Okay, so if that be the case, our first job will be to forget about the developing flow, because the flow here is a bit complex. But if you have a long pipe and or a long channel, and the flow is of reasonable high speed, then this developing I mean, you can you can have still the developing region, which may be a portion of the axial location, but still a major part of the axial location for the long pipe will be still the fully developed. If the speed of the flow is lower, the fully developed flow region is significantly spanning more and more. So in that way, the fully developed flow is a very important regime that may be manifested for a large portion of a real flow domain that we encounter in engineering. To look into that, we will consider fully developed flow through a parallel plate channel. Fully developed flow through a parallel plate channel. So this is called as plane Poiseuille flow. So what is a parallel plate channel? So just imagine that there are two parallel plates, one like this, another like this. The feature of these plates is that you have a height, this one, but the width, say let us call this height as 2h. I mean, why 2h is because we will utilize the symmetry of the problem and solve half of the domain, that is h. So that is why 2h, and there is a width b, and it is the geometrical feature that b is much greater than 2h. There are many such problems in practical engineering where the width of the channel is much greater than the height. So if the width is much greater than the height, see the velocity gradient or the pressure gradient. The gradient is essentially the change of the variable divided by the length over which the change takes place. So if the length, say this b is quite large as compared to this 2h, then the gradient along that direction, let us say this is the z direction. So you have x, y, and this one z direction. The gradient along the z direction will be much less because it is divided by the large parameter as compared to the gradients along the other directions. And because the Navier-Stokes equation essentially includes the gradients along different directions, so for the z momentum, because the gradient along z itself is not important, the z momentum itself is not important. So you can imagine that in such situations the flow is having velocity components only along x and y. So to analyze such a flow, let us write the Navier-Stokes equation. This equation, what is there written in the whiteboard in terms of the components along x and y. So you have rho. So I'm just writing this thing. Remember that you have the repeated index j. So that should be sum for j equal to 1, which is x component, j equal to 2y component, and j equal to 3, that is z component. So I'm just writing UVW instead of x1, x2, x3. So this is essentially the summation, the three terms. So this is the x equation, but we have already discussed about this parallel plate channel. So we understand that for that case, the z component is not important for the reason that we have just discussed. So you have these ones. We have also considered steady flow. So this term will be 0 for steady flow. So this will be the x momentum equation. Similarly, we will have the y momentum equation. So this is x component and y component. I am just writing with the simplified form. So now we will apply the consideration of fully developed flow, and for all these problems, at least in this chapter, whatever I am solving, I will not tell repeatedly, but we will consider rho equal to constant. I mean, otherwise variable rho will sometimes need to couple the temperature, equation of state, etc., where considerations of heat transfer and thermodynamics will come, and we are not having so much of those considerations in this fluid mechanics course. So rho equal to constant is what we are considering, at least for this particular chapter. So if rho is constant, you have the simple, the continuity will boil down to the incompressibility constraint, that is, this is equal to 0. This is divergence of velocity equal to 0 in the two-dimensional, that is xy plane. Now we will use the concept of fully developed flow. So when you have fully developed flow, recall the channel that we have schematically represented, parallel plate channel. I will just draw a schematic at the top so that you remember what is the physical problem that we are talking about. I am not talking about a general scenario, but a specific physical problem. So it is better to keep a schematic of that. So two parallel plates, so the width is not important, so I'm not drawing the width anymore. We have the center line. Let us say that is x-axis and the vertical coordinate y-axis. The situation is translationally invariant. That means it's not a function of x, so it doesn't matter where you take the origin because it is not a function of x. So fully developed, it will mean that this is equal to 0. U is not a function of x. So that means that to satisfy the continuity, this should also be 0, which means physically that v is not a function of y. So if v is not a function of y, qualitatively what it means is that if we can find out the value of v at some value of y, that value should be true for all values of y. Now out of all the values of y, we have a boundary value, that is y equal to plus h or y equal to minus h at the wall, where the velocity is 0. V velocity is 0. The v velocity is 0. That doesn't require any kind of assumption because it is simply no penetration boundary condition. By kinematics, since there are no holes in the plate, the fluid cannot penetrate normal to its direction. So by no penetration boundary condition, v is equal to 0 at y equal to plus minus h. Because v is not a function of y, that means whatever is the value of v at some value of y, which y equal to plus minus h we have identified from the boundary condition. That means v equal to 0 for all y. Because v is equal to 0 for all y, we can eliminate the v related terms in the Navier-Stokes equation. That means if we come to here, this v is 0 because v is 0, so we can also do it for the y momentum equation. So v is 0, so its all derivatives are also 0. And let us say this is the gravity direction. So Vy is equal to minus rho g. Okay, and Bx doesn't, there is no body force along x. So the governing equations, you see that there are certain simplifications that we are achieving. What are the simplifications? Because it is fully developed flow, this is 0. And a corollary of that is V equal to 0. So if you look at the x momentum equation and even the y momentum equation also, the acceleration terms are completely 0. So you get linear version of the Navier-Stokes equation, which is called as Stokes equation, which is the acceleration equal to 0 if you substitute in the Navier-Stokes equation. That is called as Stokes equation. Because the acceleration is 0, you get certain very clear advantages. Advantage means in terms of mathematical analysis. The non-linearity that bothers so much for analytical solution is completely gone. The nonlinear term is because of this, u into partial derivative of u with respect to x. So all these terms, like which has products of velocity components in either velocity or their gradient, these terms are all 0. That means the problem has become a linear problem, and that is why fully developed flow is something which it gives good physical insight, but it also has a mathematical advantage that you don't have to really bother about the non-linearity of the problem. So we will look into the solution of this problem quite sort of in a straightforward manner, because the formulation itself is something which requires a bit of analysis, but once you have the equations, it's nothing great that you have to do to solve. So first, if we consider the y momentum is the simplest one, so you have 0 is equal to this one. So you have to imagine that how important is it? So very often we are considering a situation where this channel height is not so much over which the pressure will change with height, so that you can neglect. P as a function of y, it may be neglected for narrow channels where the height itself is not much, so how much it will vary because of gravity. The second possibility is that, well, if it varies, it varies. We define a new variable P star is equal to P plus rho g y, so that the variation of pressure with y is implicitly, or why implicitly, in a very straightforward way, is accommodated in this particular definition. So this tells you that you have this pressure and a y dependent variation of that added on the top of it, which is purely due to fluid statics. Because see, this is a very interesting situation. This is a fluid dynamics problem, but the y direction, the momentum conservation, is giving rise to actually a fluid statics problem and not a dynamics problem. And this is the fluid statics component of the pressure variation. In fluid mechanics, this expression has a very important meaning, because this tells you a cumulative effect of the height or the gravity head and the pressure head, and so this is called as piezometric pressure. it follows from instrument called as piezometer, which can give you the sum of the pressure and the gravity here. So now in the x momentum, you can as well write it as the gradient of piezometric pressure. So now why you can write, because the y related term doesn't have x derivative, so that is decoupled from x. If instead of p you can write p star minus rho gy, so you can write minus this one, partial derivative of p star with respect to y, plus rho g, this term, minus rho g, this term, is equal to 0. Right? So now if you cancel these two, you can clearly see from here that we have got a pressure-like parameter, which is not a function of y, because its y derivative is 0. So that means you can, because it is not a function of y, it is steady flow, it's not also a function of time. So you can simply write it as dp star dx. Because partial derivative means what? It could be a function of more than one variable, but here we have seen that p star is just a function of one variable, that is x. So in that way, the x momentum equation, which is written here, can be grossly simplified so that you have the left hand side 0 and the right hand side is equal to minus dp star dx. And because u is not a function of x, so its second derivative is also 0. This is due to fully developed flow. And because u is not a function of x or z or time, this will also become ordinary derivative. So plus mu, this one. So after a significant conceptual exercise from the Navier-Stokes equation, we have come to a very simple ordinary differential equation that governs the distribution of pressure and velocity for a fully developed flow through a parallel plate channel. We will continue with this in the next class, that is the coming Monday's class, with an objective of number one, to of course solve this by double integration, which is very straightforward, but more importantly, to understand the physics that is being conveyed by this equation. That is, what physically does it say? And then we will quickly move to a different variant of this problem, that instead of a parallel plate channel, if the z dimension or the dimension of the channel in the z direction is not very large, but comparable with h, that is, say, a rectangular channel instead of a parallel plate channel, what would be the corresponding change? That is some addition beyond what is covered in related topics in undergraduate field movements. So we'll consider all these in the next class. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, you can put up. Otherwise, we'll close the class.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, you asked to do a report on emptying of water tank.
Yes.
Sir, we made, I together with my friend did report and we mailed you.
That is fine. If you have mailed me, definitely I will go through that.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Uh, any other point that you want to talk about? If not, we will close today's class and we will continue on the coming Monday as per our usual class hour. Thank you very much.